My name is Scott Ravenkamp. I'm in a partnership with my uncle Lyle. We run Ravenkamp Farms. We farm just under 7,000 acres here on the high plains of eastern Colorado. We're located in Hugo, Colorado, just west of Hugo. We've been pretty much continuous crop, or what we call continuous crop. We eliminated fallow in the late 90s. We did have a little bit last year in the summer of 2012 because we couldn't get some stuff planted. It was just so dry. Wasn't very happy about that, but that's what happened. We're running, pretty intensive crop rotation. We kind of have four primary crops. That was wheat, corn, sunflowers, and proso. This year we're looking at eliminating the wheat and going to cereal rye and triticale, simply looking to increase the amount of residue that we can grow with them crops. We feel like they grow taller. On average, we think 6 to 12 inches, and then we think they're a little more drought tolerant, which has been a big deal the last couple of years. We're experimenting with a lot of other crops. Mainly black oats would be a primary one, and then we started planting a little bit of milo this year. The milo in our area has some obstacles it's got to overcome. We're pretty high in elevation at about 5,400 feet. We get pretty cool at night, and the milo seems to struggle with that a little bit. But we also think it's more drought tolerant than the corn, so that's why we're looking at it. The no-till was kind of a side benefit, I guess, to what drove us into doing what we're doing. What really started it was I come back to the farm. We needed more acres. The acres were hard to come by because of CRP in our area. So we sat down and just looked, and we had a third to a half of our acres. We're not growing a crop every year with the fallow, and we just decided we wanted to eliminate that. And so that kind of drove us to planting wheat behind our proso crop. And then that kind of led to, well, we can grow more spring crops, and it just kind of snowballed after that to the point we're at now. Obviously, some of the soil health benefits that we're seeing have all kind of, I'm just going to admit it, we've kind of stumbled upon it. We didn't really do a lot of the things we did for that benefit, but now we're seeing it. And now that's changing the reason we're doing things. We're doing it more for the soil health and the residue, and all that's more important than the actual just having more acres in a crop every year. The evaporation is probably our biggest obstacle. How much water we can actually evaporate in a year is kind of outstanding, really, for no more water than we get. And that's where residue becomes super critical. We got to keep that soil covered up. That's probably the biggest challenge we've got to overcome, is how to grow enough residue. Then after that, I'd say it's the wind. Wind erosion is our biggest erosion factor. Obviously, if you don't have it covered up and we get some of the rain events like what we've been having here just recently, then water erosion becomes a pretty big issue, simply because of our slopes, and we're not terraced up and all that. And so them are probably the two biggest issues, would be the evaporation and then the wind, and then our growing season issues with frost and stuff. But I don't think that's any more extreme than a lot of other places in the country.
Tell me a little bit about this field behind you, what you got here, what was here before it.
This field here is oil sunflowers, black oil sunflowers. I definitely would think it's probably an above average, above normal for us. It looks like a pretty good field of sunflowers. We like to think our sunflowers, on average anyway, will make about 1,200 pounds. Before that, it was corn in 2012. 2012 was a really tough year in this area. We harvested about 35 bushel off of it, which I thought was pretty good, considering there was a lot of corn all the way around it that didn't get harvested at all. Before that, it was winter wheat, again, continuous crop winter wheat, that made about 27 bushel. And that wheat was planted directly behind proso millet that had made right around 55 bushel. And then before that, it was sunflowers that got hailed off. We did not harvest them. They looked just about like this one afternoon, and by that evening they were little bitty sticks sticking out of the ground. And so that is one of them things that can happen out here that will really set you back. We were fortunate that proso crop the next year was a really good crop and got us going again, but that hailstorm will really strip the residue off. And we kind of farm in a zero mistake environment. and it can take years to recover from something like that. Residue's king. I mean, we say it all the time. It's the #1 thing we have to have. And that kind of leads to what we feel like carbon in the soil. That's the thing we're really lacking. And going about growing enough of it is our biggest hurdle that we're facing right now. Growing enough carbon to keep the soil covered up.
And you harvest this when and how?
We'll harvest this probably, this field especially, I would think we'll have to wait for a frost. So we'll probably think right now, I'd say the middle of October is when we'll be in here harvesting it. Obviously, if it would freeze really hard before the 1st of October. And again, it could freeze here any time really now, from now on, and we could freeze at any time, but we count on a mid-September to the 1st of October frost. We need a good hard killing frost to get these to dry down. And then, so we're probably looking at that 1st of October to the middle of October is when we'll harvest these.